Welcome aboard the Ferry of Knowledge. My name is Luca, and I'll be your captain tonight. As we begin our journey, find a comfortable position, somewhere you can rest, and allow the day to slowly loosen its hold. In a moment, we'll set sail together, leaving behind noise, distraction, and the weight of the waking world. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth as the Ferry of Knowledge quietly departs. Tonight, we follow the Sirens, beings whose danger never came from claws or strength, but from voice alone. Their story unfolds along open water, where sailors trusted their senses and where sound carried farther than sight. What they were, why they existed, and how people learned to survive them will shape everything that follows. Long before sailors feared the Sirens, the sea already carried voices. Wind moved across open water in long, even strokes. Waves folded into one another with a steady rhythm. Ropes creaked. Hulls answered pressure with low, wooden groans. For those who traveled by ship, sound arrived first and lingered longest. This mattered. Sight could be fooled by distance. Smell faded quickly over water. Sound, however, traveled uninterrupted. It reached sailors before land did. It announced safety, weather, and danger alike. Those who survived learned to listen closely. The Sirens entered this space deliberately. Their island rose low and pale from the sea, rocky and unremarkable at a distance. No towering cliffs warned travelers away. No violent currents guarded its edge. Ships passed near it naturally, drawn close by favorable winds and calm water. What reached them first was the voice. It arrived faintly at the edge of hearing, woven into the sound of waves so seamlessly that sailors often failed to notice the moment it began. The song carried no urgency. It did not demand attention. It offered recognition. Each listener heard something different. Some heard praise, words shaped like memory, recalling past victories and forgotten strengths. Others heard reassurance, a voice that knew their name, their doubts, their weariness. The song adjusted itself effortlessly, finding the shape that fit whoever listened. Hands slowed at the oars, eyes lifted toward the sound. Direction lost importance. Ships drifted closer, guided less by intention than by certainty that something meaningful waited just ahead. The Sirens required nothing more. They did not chase. They did not threaten. They allowed desire to do the work. Those who followed the song steered toward shore willingly, convinced that arrival would bring understanding rather than danger. Ships grounded on rocks hidden just beneath the surface. Wood splintered quietly. The sea closed over what remained. The voices continued. They did not rise in triumph. They did not shift in tone. The song flowed on, unchanged, prepared for the next listener already approaching from the horizon. This was how the Sirens shaped their domain. Through patience, through accuracy, through through sound that never needed to raise its volume to be heard. And long before anyone tried to escape them, the sirens had already learned something essential. People move toward what feels familiar, even when it leads them away from safety. The sirens did not begin as predators. Their origin traced back to a moment of loss that rippled outward, altering several lives at once. In earlier days, they moved among the attendants of Persephone, keeping her company in open fields and along quiet paths. Their role centered on presence, walking, listening, sharing time without urgency. When Persephone vanished, the world shifted. Her absence unsettled the rhythms of growth and season, drawing the attention of Demeter, whose grief reshaped the land itself. Fields withered, cycles paused, search replaced balance. Everyone connected to Persephone felt the disruption differently, carrying it in ways that altered their course. The sirens carried it through sound. Stories diverged about the precise moment of change. Some placed it beside the fields where Persephone had last been seen. Others spoke of the shoreline, where grief met open water and had space to travel. What remained consistent was the outcome. Their voices deepened, gaining reach and clarity beyond ordinary song. The transformation carried intention. The sirens were given voices capable of holding memory, voices that could shape themselves around the listener's inner landscape. This gift carried weight. Sound ceased to be simple expression and became influence. Each note carried insight, shaped by awareness of what the listener longed to hear. Their forms changed alongside their voices. Feathered wings grew strong enough to lift them above rock and surf. Talons formed for balance along uneven stone. Their bodies adapted to a life spent between air and sea, always positioned where sound traveled best. They settled along a narrow stretch of coast. The location mattered. Winds passed cleanly there. Currents slowed. Ships traveling common routes drifted naturally within range of the island's reach. The sirens placed themselves where listening already mattered, where sailors leaned on sound to guide decisions. Purpose emerged gradually. The sirens did not seek destruction, they sought attention. Their voices explored the space between desire and recognition, discovering how easily sound could guide movement. Each encounter refined their awareness, teaching them which tones lingered, which words settled deepest. The sea carried the rest. Ship after ship responded. Some slowed, some altered course. Some approached until rock met wood and momentum ended. The island collected fragments of these encounters, broken hulls, scattered cargo, reminders of how sound alone could redirect fate. The sirens remained. They listened as carefully as they sang, learning from every response. Their presence grew precise, tuned to the patterns of human longing. What began as loss reshaped itself into function. And so the sirens took their place along the sea lanes, shaped by grief, sustained by attention, and prepared to wait as long as the water carried sound. Understanding arrived in fragments. Ships began to vanish along a familiar stretch of sea. Routes that once felt dependable started to feel uncertain, marked by debris and stories that never matched exactly. One crew spoke of voices that praised their skill. Another remembered songs that promised rest after long weeks at sea. Each account differed in detail, yet all ended the same way, with a ship drawn off course and broken against unseen rock. At first, these stories sounded like coincidence. Sailors accepted loss as part of travel. Storms scattered fleets. Currents misled navigation. Fatigue shaped poor judgment. The sea offered many explanations, and most felt sufficient. Over time, a pattern surfaced. The disappearances clustered around calm days, when wind favored easy passage and waves offered little resistance. Ships drifted toward the same quiet waters, slowed without alarm, and failed to reappear. Survivors were rare, and those who returned struggled to describe what had happened with certainty. Sound emerged as the common thread. Those who came back spoke of hearing something before anything else. A melody woven into the rhythm of oars, words that seemed to belong to memory instead of the present moment. Each voice carried familiarity, shaped to the listener's own past. This detail changed behavior. Experienced sailors began to mark the area on their mental maps. They adjusted routes slightly outward. They assigned extra lookouts during calm stretches. Some crews agreed to maintain silence while passing certain waters, focusing on the sound of wind and hull alone. Warnings followed. Captains shared what they had learned in ports and harbors. They spoke quietly at first, uncertain how to explain danger that arrived without force. Over time, the message sharpened. A place existed where listening too closely carried risk. The sirens adapted. As ships adjusted their paths, the voices shifted in reach and tone. Songs traveled farther. Harmonies layered themselves, carrying across open water with greater precision. The sound found its way into moments of inattention, slipping between orders and conversation. Avoidance proved difficult. Sound moved freely. It curved with wind and water, reaching ears even when eyes stayed fixed ahead. Sailors learned that resisting the pull required preparation rather than instinct. Those who relied on discipline alone struggled. The voice entered thought before reaction followed. Knowledge spread unevenly. Some crews treated the warnings seriously. Others dismissed them as exaggeration, confident in their own restraint. The sirens continued to collect the consequences of that confidence, their island bearing quiet witness to each approach. The sea changed its reputation. What had once felt open and generous gained a new edge, a reminder that danger sometimes arrives without urgency, carried gently on the same medium that once guided ships safely home. By the time the truth settled into common understanding, many had already paid its cost. The sirens remained in place, voices steady, waiting for the next listener to test whether awareness alone could keep a course true. Avoidance proved harder than warning. Sailors learned quickly that steering wide solved little. Wind shifted without notice. Currents curved ships back toward familiar routes. Even those who believed they had chosen a safer passage sometimes found themselves drifting closer than intended, carried by forces too subtle to feel until correction came too late. The voice always arrived first. It slid beneath conversation, threaded through the creak of timber and the splash of oars. At a distance, it felt harmless, a suggestion rather than a call. Crews noticed hands slow, then pause. Attention lifted away from sails and rigging. Small adjustments stopped being made. Those who recognized the danger tried discipline. Orders were repeated more sharply. Songs were replaced with silence. Some sailors covered their ears with cloth, though this dulled balance and made coordination difficult. Others focused on counting strokes or reciting familiar routes aloud, anchoring thought to repetition. These efforts worked briefly. The sirens adjusted their song with precision. Volume rose slightly. Harmony thickened. Words took clearer shape. The sound found its way through gaps in focus, reaching those who believed themselves prepared. Ships faltered. Oars lost rhythm. Helm control weakened. Course drifted just enough for submerged rock to claim the hull. Damage followed quietly, often without panic. By the time danger became visible, momentum carried vessels too far inward to escape. Learning continued through loss. A few crews survived long enough to report something important. Resisting the sirens required more than effort. It required intervention. The mind alone struggled to hold against a voice shaped specifically to meet it. This understanding spread. Sailors began speaking of the sirens as a challenge of method rather than courage. Passing their island demanded planning that removed choice entirely. Willpower proved unreliable once the song reached its full clarity. The sea lanes adjusted again. Some routes fell out of use. Others gained reputation for safety through longer travel. Yet commerce and necessity continued to draw ships close to the sirens' waters. Avoidance remained imperfect. The problem persisted. The sirens listened. They learned from each failed passage. Their song refined itself, growing more attuned to hesitation and confidence alike. What worked once ceased to matter. Adaptation followed every attempt. The situation reached a turning point when one voyage approached the sirens with intention rather than hope. A ship arrived carrying preparation shaped by forethought, restraint, and an understanding of sound itself. That journey would change how the sirens were faced forever. The ship approached with intention already set. Its captain, Odysseus, carried experience shaped by long travel and careful listening. His journeys had taught him that survival often depended less on strength than on preparation. He paid attention to patterns others dismissed. Stories mattered to him, especially when they repeated. He believed the warnings. Before reaching the sirens' waters, Odysseus gathered his crew and explained what awaited them ahead. He described the voices, the pull, the danger carried through sound alone. He did not test their resolve. He removed it from the equation. Wax was warmed and pressed carefully into every sailor's ears. Each man lost the ability to hear command, song, or warning. Communication shifted entirely to gesture and routine, rehearsed in advance until it felt instinctive. Oars moved by sight alone. The helm held steady through agreed signals. The ship continued forward without pause. Odysseus prepared differently. He chose to hear. Rope bound him securely to the mast, wound tight enough to prevent movement, yet loose enough to allow breath. He instructed his crew to ignore him completely once the wax was set. Whatever he said, whatever he demanded, they were to continue rowing until the danger passed. The ship entered the sirens' reach. The song arrived as it always had, carried effortlessly across open water. It found Odysseus immediately, shaping itself with precision. The voices spoke with warmth and familiarity, offering knowledge gathered across lifetimes. They promised understanding, insight, and rest after long struggle. Odysseus strained against the rope. He called out, urged the crew to turn toward the sound. His body responded before thought could intervene. The desire to move closer rose quickly, overwhelming intention. The song reached deeply, bypassing caution entirely. The ship held course. Oars continued their rhythm. The crew rowed steadily, eyes forward, deaf to everything except the water ahead. No adjustment followed Odysseus's pleas. No hesitation entered their movement. Bound to the mast, Odysseus listened fully. The voices revealed themselves without resistance. They offered stories of past victories, unspoken regrets, moments he believed forgotten. Each word landed with accuracy, tuned precisely to his inner life. The song carried neither urgency nor command. It relied on certainty alone. Then it faded. Distance thinned the sound gradually, loosening its grip with every stroke of the oars. The ship moved beyond the reach of the island. Odysseus's strength returned as the pull weakened. His body relaxed against the rope as the voices dissolved into ordinary sea sound. Only then did the crew remove the wax. They untied their captain in silence, continuing onward without pause. The Sirens' island slipped behind them, unchanged, its rocks pale against the water. The method worked. The Sirens had been passed through planning, cooperation, and the removal of choice. The solution spread quickly among sailors, reshaping how the threat was understood. Sound had met structure, and for the first time, the Sirens faced travelers who arrived prepared to hear, without following. The sea returned to its usual rhythm. After Odysseus's ship passed, the Sirens remained on their island as they always had, wings folded loosely, voices drifting across water that no longer answered them. The song continued, steady and precise, shaped by the same care it had always carried. Something had shifted. For the first time, a ship had entered their reach, heard every note, and continued onward. No wreckage followed, no splintered hull washed ashore. The water remained undisturbed, as though the encounter had never taken place. The Sirens noticed immediately. Their voices adjusted instinctively, exploring new tones and harmonies. The song reached farther, lingering longer in the air. It leaned into promise and recognition, refining itself in response to resistance. Yet the distance between sound and movement held. Word traveled quickly along the sea lanes. Sailors spoke of wax and rope, of preparation replacing impulse. They repeated the method carefully, emphasizing rehearsal and trust over bravery. Crews practiced signals. Captains planned routes with intention instead of hope. Ships began to pass. Some moved through quickly. Others slowed but held course. A few struggled visibly, oars faltering as the song reached them, yet continued onward through coordination and restraint. The island collected fewer remains. The shoreline grew quieter. The Sirens adapted again. They listened more closely to the spaces between sounds, searching for hesitation. Their song grew more intricate, layering meaning and memory with greater care. The voices learned to wait, drawing out moments of doubt before resolving them into certainty. Still, the pattern held. Prepared ships passed. Unprepared ones drifted inward, as they always had. The danger had narrowed, no longer universal, now conditional. Awareness divided outcome from consequence. This altered the Sirens' place in the world. They remained feared, yet no longer unavoidable. Their island became a boundary tested by method rather than fate. Sailors respected the danger without surrendering to it. The Sirens continued to sing. Their voices did not weaken. Their patience endured. They waited for the unprepared, for those who trusted instinct alone, for travelers who believed discipline unnecessary. The sea carried both kinds. And so the Sirens' influence settled into a new shape, no longer absolute, yet far from diminished. Their song still traveled freely, offering itself to anyone willing to listen without preparation. The island remained, the voices endured, and the choice between following and passing grew clearer with every voyage. After the Sirens were passed with preparation, their story began to change. Sailors spoke of them differently now. Fear gave way to description. The danger gained edges and rules. Temptation became something that could be studied, anticipated, and answered with structure. The Sirens remained powerful, yet their influence felt more precise, less mysterious. This precision mattered. Temptation had always existed at sea, the urge to rest, to drift, to follow a promise of ease after long strain. The Sirens gave that urge a voice. Their song placed words and melody around a feeling sailors already carried within them. What made the encounter dangerous was recognition, the sense that the voice understood something deeply personal. That understanding lingered. Even after ships passed safely, the memory of the song stayed with those who had heard it. Sailors described a strange clarity afterward, as though something unspoken had surfaced and then settled again. The voices had reached into thought, naming desires usually kept quiet. This shaped behavior. Crews learned to talk more openly before dangerous passages. Captains explained risks in advance. Routines were practiced until they felt automatic. Trust among sailors grew stronger, built on shared restraint rather than individual resolve. The Sirens' role shifted. They became a test of readiness rather than a sentence of loss. Their island marked a boundary where discipline mattered more than courage. Those who prepared passed through carrying knowledge gained through experience. Those who dismissed preparation continued to drift inward. The sea reflected this divide. Routes remained open, yet stories carried warnings alongside instructions. Temptation gained context. Sound lost some of its secrecy, revealing itself as a force that could be anticipated and met without surrender. The Sirens continued to sing, unchanged in intent. Their voices carried memory, praise, and promise, as they always had. They offered knowledge shaped to each listener, waiting for attention to turn into movement. Their patience remained intact. What changed was the listener. Awareness transformed the encounter. Desire lost its certainty. Preparation interrupted momentum. The song still reached ears, yet no longer guaranteed direction. The Sirens had revealed something lasting. Temptation does its work most effectively when unexamined. Once named and understood, it remains present, yet loses the power to decide. Their island continued to rise quietly from the sea, voices drifting outward with the wind, and every ship that passed carried a choice shaped long before the sound arrived. Time altered the shoreline more slowly than it altered understanding. The island remained where it had always been, low and pale against open water. Waves continued to break along its rocks. Wind carried voices outward in long, steady paths. The sirens kept their place between sea and sky, wings resting, posture unchanged. Fewer ships approached closely now. Those that did arrived with quiet purpose. Crews moved in practiced rhythm, eyes forward, bodies aligned with routines rehearsed long before land fell behind them. Sound reached them as it always had, yet movement followed plan instead of impulse. The sirens listened. They heard restraint enter the sea lanes. They sensed the difference between hesitation and preparation. Some ships slowed briefly, then continued on. Others passed through with hardly a shift in pace. The water carried fewer fragments of wood. The shoreline gathered less evidence of loss. This absence reshaped the sirens' existence. They remained bound to their function, yet the rhythm of fulfillment changed. Waiting stretched longer between encounters. Their song continued to refine itself, exploring nuance rather than volume, memory rather than immediacy. Each voice remained tuned to the listener it sought. Unprepared travelers still drifted inward. Confidence without structure continued to falter. Those who trusted instinct alone found their hands slow, their course soften, their attention pulled toward promise. The sirens remained precise with these listeners, guiding movement without resistance. The difference lay in choice. Awareness divided outcomes cleanly. Knowledge shaped survival. Preparation replaced hope. The sea carried both outcomes side by side, offering no protection beyond what was carried aboard. The sirens endured within this balance. They neither vanished nor weakened. Their role narrowed, focusing on those who approached without discipline. Their island remained a place where sound tested readiness, where listening revealed intention. Over time, sailors spoke of the sirens less as monsters and more as measure. Passing them marked experience. Failing them marked haste. The story grew calmer, clearer, shaped by method instead of fear. The voices continued to travel across water. They waited patiently for ears willing to follow rather than prepare. And the sea, unchanged in appearance, carried the quiet division forward, separating those who planned from those who trusted desire to guide them home. The sirens settled into memory without spectacle. They remained present along the sea lanes, yet their influence no longer felt absolute. Sailors carried the method with them now: wax, rope, rehearsal, trust. Each successful passage reinforced the same quiet understanding. Danger that relies on desire weakens when desire is anticipated. Stories changed tone. Early accounts had focused on loss, ships drawn inward, voices too powerful to resist. Later tellings emphasized preparation and restraint. The sirens became a reference point for moments when impulse threatened to steer course. Their song came to represent temptation that felt meaningful precisely because it spoke truth, not because it lied. This distinction mattered. The voices never deceived outright. They reflected what listeners already carried: longing for recognition, relief from effort, understanding of one's own story. The danger lay in surrendering direction to that recognition. Sailors learned to listen without following. They spoke of the sirens as a test rather than a trap. Passing the island marked experience gained, not risk avoided. The sea remained wide and uncertain, yet the presence of the sirens gave it a boundary shaped by choice. The island endured quietly, wings folded, voices carried, waiting continued. The sirens did not change because the world learned. They continued offering exactly what they always had. The shift occurred entirely in those who approached with awareness already formed. The lesson traveled farther than the island itself. People spoke of sirens when describing distractions that felt personal and convincing. The name entered language as a way to describe pull without force, persuasion without command. The story detached from place and settled into habit. The sirens had completed their work. They no longer required wreckage to prove their power. Their endurance rested in understanding passed forward, in restraint practiced before desire arrived. The sea carried that knowledge outward, shaping choices long after the voices faded into distance. The sirens endured because their danger never depended on force. They occupied a space that could not be destroyed or sealed away. Sound traveled freely. Desire formed internally. No wall, weapon, or distance could fully remove their influence. The only lasting response lay in understanding how and why their song worked. That understanding arrived slowly. The sirens revealed that temptation often feels truthful. Their voices offered recognition rather than illusion, speaking to real experiences, real fatigue, real longing. What they provided felt meaningful because it reflected something already present within the listener. This made them difficult to escape. Avoidance offered limited protection. Suppression failed under pressure. What succeeded was preparation, the deliberate removal of choice at the moment when choice became unreliable. Wax blocked sound. Rope restricted movement. Trust replaced impulse. The sirens remained unchanged throughout this shift. They continued to sing. They continued to wait. Their role did not soften or harden. They existed as a constant, allowing the world to learn at its own pace. This constancy gave their story weight. The sirens became a reminder that awareness alone does little without structure. Knowing danger exists does not prevent movement toward it. Planning, cooperation, and restraint alter outcome far more effectively than intention. Their island stayed where it always had been: low stone, pale rock, open sky, voices drifting across water. Ships passed with greater regularity now, carrying crews shaped by routine and rehearsal. Some slowed, some struggled briefly. Most continued onward, their course held steady by choices made long before sound reached them. The sirens did not fade into irrelevance. They remained present wherever attention wavered, wherever desire offered certainty without effort. Their song lived on in language, memory, and habit, shaping how people understood distraction, temptation, and discipline. As the story settles, the voices drift back into the rhythm of the sea. They wait patiently, not for everyone, only for those who arrive unprepared to listen.